Hi everyone, I'm very glad. I'm super excited here to be talking at EFLtalks to share cream of the crops with you, to be used in the classroom. The idea of my talk is sharing teaching tips and ideas how to teach very young learners. I'm a person who is in trouble now, as probably you can guess, because I've been teaching groups of very young learners for a while, for many years, and now I've got a challenge to go online with them. But my talk is going to be about teaching them to speak, and I do hope that you will find some tips helpful for online as well. If you need some more tools for online practice with very young learners, let me know. I'll tell you at the end of my talk. So here we go. And the reason why I chose this topic is that, in my personal opinion, we do undervalue ability of learners to speak, ability of very young learners to use the language that they can use. So here on the slide you can see authentic structures and constructions that my students learn first of all, despite the fact that they come to my classes only twice a week. I strongly believe we can activate our kids' innate ability that is given by the nature to use a foreign language if we give them enough room for practice. So here we go. I'm going to share some techniques with you to be used in your classroom. And the very first technique I'd like to share with you is using gestures. Very helpful for real-life communication, isn't it? We tend to think of real-life communication while teaching adults to speak, but what about very young learners? They do talk a lot in their real life, and why not teach them in the most appropriate way they can absorb it? So, the way it works in practice is the following. Key words, key gestures. By key gestures, I mean some meaningful things that you can do with your fingers and going online with your face as well, while talking about high frequency words for this level and age. On your screen now you can see the high frequency words for 4 years olds, and this is the way it works in practice. First, teacher and student show and say at the same time, then only student show and say and teacher shows if necessary, and at the last level students say without gestures and the teacher is able to jump in only if absolutely necessary. And here are some words that need gestures in my opinion. For example, I, you, can, am, is, are, which I believe is a very big problem, eat, what, and like. Like in this way can be a great challenge for very young learners of 3 years old. That's why we have to think of kids' ability while inventing an appropriate gesture for them. So my option for like is this way, because dexterity of kids of 3 years old is very different. As a follow-up, I would offer you a miming game, which can be played in 2 ways. You might show them a sentence, for example, what am I doing? I hope you can guess the sentence, you're peeling a banana. But don't forget about the second option of this game, which means if you've learned some particular authentic constructions and structures like this, for example, this gesture means for us, got it. Got it. Come on. I've finished. That's it. So here, as a miming game, you might practice these kind of gestures, which your students will do, and the other person in pairs, it should be played in pairs, and the other person will have to guess what their partner is showing. And that's the idea of a miming game. The second technique is using lesson time effectively, and here is my checklist for you. Do you use much pair work in your classroom? A lot of teachers believe it's not possible with very young learners. I do know it is, and even going online, it is quite possible with possibilities of Zoom. Then what about student teaching time, student talking time, I'm sorry, and teacher talking time? In my opinion, we can reduce teacher talking time, especially while talking about very young learners, because if we let ourselves speak as much as we can, there will be no time for students. What about TPR approach? While using a lot of movements in the classroom and even in online lessons, while using a lot of actions here, jumping, running, using facial expressions, why not motivate and encourage your students speak while moving, coloring and playing? What about watching video? Isn't it very natural to talk about what you are watching? For example, asking your students, who is this girl, how old is she, what are they doing, what have they done, and so on and so forth. And my third advice is about transitions. You definitely use transitions. By transitions, I mean some activities, probably TPR activities, which connect different parts of lesson, link them. I call them bridges because, in my opinion, according to the logics of my lesson and according to the lesson structure, they connect two parts of lesson, any parts of lesson, and they should be logically explained. For example, my students stand in a line and start physically walking one next to another and saying some sentences, answering my questions, for example. While talking about cooking, they can be answering my questions like, what are you doing? We are going home. What are you going to do at home? We are going to cook. And that's it. It seems to me a very logical thing on the one hand and a very useful help and practice for speaking on the other. As a follow-up here is a tidy up game. By tidy up game, I mean a game when you have to tidy up all the materials away from your table to place them where they are stored. So, for example, if you have a lot of toys on your table, you have to ask, can I call all the animals, please? And your students give you all the animals saying something. That's the idea. They might say, here you are, or a cat goes to Tatiana, the dog went home, whatever you like, whatever you've learned. Don't forget to let your students be the teacher, the leader of the game. That's the idea. And the third technique, which I'd like to share with you, is definitely materials to dive for. If a child is passionately eager to possess some toy, at least for some time, you can use this intense desire in your own purpose to let your students speak and to unlock their potential. So, materials should be definitely bright, different in shape, sizes, and texture. And by the way, while talking online, it's pretty possible to to do it even online, asking your parents of your students, as I do, to prepare some kind of materials that are possible to be prepared. So they are very easy to use as well, and they are multifunctional. So if you're looking for a magic button for let your students speak and to give them an opportunity to use their natural ability to learn speaking, this is materials, definitely, because they can use them in the most authentic way as it's possible. For example, while helping the teacher, while doing something in your classroom, if you're working offline, you can ask them to help. Can you please help me tidy up this? And they can comment it. Asking for a toy, for example, while taking out a toy like this, you can ask them to ask for it. Can I have a piece of watermelon, please? Here you are. Describing a toy. What kind of watermelon would you like to get? So they have to name it, they have to describe it. And definitely responding to what happens in the classroom while playing. One more game that you might also use with your students, both online and offline, is Little Mouse game. So that's it. These are the plastic cups, and the way you play it is that you hide the mouse. Let me show you it for the online option. You hide the mouse in the plastic cup, and it's there, and they have to guess where it's hidden. So the reason why I adore this game is that it has a great potential for speaking. So you might ask your students to practice very authentic constructions here, and my students of 4 and 5 years old do practice the constructions and structures you see on the slide. The thing that I would like to draw your attention to is that we are in charge. We teachers of very young learners are in charge of everything. And now, when our students go online, we're still able to let them speak. Thank you very much.